I'm not discarding that possibility. But in the interest of trying to find common ground, what I see foundationally is whatever bad decisions were made around 45, 48, a bunch of people got born in this land, Israeli and Palestinian, who didn't choose to get born there. It's not their fault. I think people are responsible for their choices. None of these people are responsible for being born into that situation. All of them have inherited bad baggage from the history that other people built for them. And there should hopefully be a constructive way. There must always be an optimum way out of any situation, and I would hope that the optimum for all of those people, if you empathise with them, is potentially better than something as drastic as I think you just proposed, but maybe I'm misquoting it. So when I said, what do you think the way forward is, your answer was what?
For the stolen land that has been taken to be returned to its rightful owners.
Would you go, what, pre-67 borders, or just the whole thing?
Yeah, the whole thing. So do you agree that it's stolen land?
I think it's so complicated. I genuinely do.
How can it be complicated? I asked you what the Nakba is. I asked you if it's ethnic cleansing. Your response is only that it's complicated. That's not a real response. That shows kind of moral cowardice, because you're not acknowledging the reality.
It could show a moral cowardice, or it could show that sometimes situations are genuinely complex. And I think there may be
I didn't ask you for a solution. I just want us to come to the same terms as to the reality, the history.
Okay, can I give you some...
Is it stolen land?
I'm not sure I'm qualified to say so, but I've got a strong suspicion that chunks of it are, yes. Is that fair?
How much of the chunks are stolen?
I don't know, but so your opening question was that, and I think I'm ceding that I think you have a point on the part of the Palestinians. Can I try and say what I think might be some positive things first, see if you disagree?
Please, go ahead.
Okay, number one. I'm a big fan of Daniel Schmattenberger. Daniel Schmattenberger says, when asked the question, what's one thing everybody could do to improve the world? He goes, take a small amount of time and really try and look at it from the other person's position. Learn to phrase their argument as well as they would. And try and empathise with how it feels to be there. Okay? I think that's good universal advice. I think at worst, if you do that 10 minutes a day, you've wasted 10 minutes, and at best, you may improve the situation. So that's one thing everybody could do.
I agree.
To represent where I personally am at, with my limited understanding of this, if I'd been in the ground on Saturday the 7th, I don't know what I would do, because I've never been in that situation. But I think what I should do is try and defend the settlers, and I would have tried to stand by them. I hope I behaved right.
Well,
now, hang on, let me balance it. Equally, right now, if there are innocent Palestinians who are at the receiving end of that retaliation, I hope I would stand on the ground to help to protect them.
But why do you define...
Is that reasonable? So I'm trying to side with the innocent people as individuals, more than put people into big tribal groups and then make blanket statements. That's why I think it's complicated.
I'm not trying to put people in tribal groups. I'm just talking about very clear moral terms that I think you as a reasonable person will agree to. Okay. That you can't define the settlers as neutral parties. They have settled illegally according to international law, even according, if you want to say, yeah, Israel is legitimate within the 1967 borders. Even if I conceded that, the settlers have gone way beyond those borders, and they've been condemned by international law. Israel doesn't care about international law. Those settlers are basically pushing Palestinians literally out of their homes at gunpoint. And so they're not neutral. So when you describe October 7th, you shouldn't describe it as an unprovoked attack.
I'm not.
You should
I'm not suggesting...
Fine, not you, Tony, but others. The media, they want to present it as if Palestinians are just bloodthirsty and they have this terroristic attack against innocent settlers. These are not innocent settlers. They are literally stealing the land of Palestinians at gunpoint, subjecting Palestinians to all kinds of apartheid, ethnic cleansing, and things that all moral people of conscience, such as yourself, would agree is absolutely wrong. And that's why I want to get your agreement on, so we have a shared basis to discuss, other political matters. But if you can't agree that this is unconscionable, immoral, unjust, barbaric, ethnic cleansing, if we can't agree to those terms, then it's difficult to have a further conversation.
If I could respond to everything you said apart from ethnic cleansing, because I think ethnic cleansing is so emotive. In terms of justice, there's always an optimum ideal. An ethical ideal, I think the way the Palestinians have been treated falls significantly short of that ethical ideal. Yeah? I think
Palestinians have fallen? How? How have they fallen short?
Sorry, I didn't say that. I said the way they've been treated.
Sorry. Okay.
I believe that's the case.
I misheard.
I could be completely wrong, because you've got to study your facts. I may not know enough facts. There are other people here who will correct me on my assumptions. But I'm a layman, I'm trying to do the best I can, okay? I think, okay, here's something hopefully we can agree on. Upholding international law with uniformity for all people at all times is an aspiration that we could all aspire to, yeah? So
As long as the international laws are just.
Okay, well, just but whatever the international laws are, at least they should be arbitrated and executed with uniformity for all people, irrespective of nation or faith. Is that reasonable?
Fair enough.
Okay, so from that positive point coming in, I'd say we're all collectively guilty to some extent, everybody, of not implementing that successfully, and hopefully we can see that if we had implemented it, it might have diffused some of the tension, because I believe...
How did Palestinians violate international law?
I think the specific Hamas people who just walked in and killed over 1,000 people, as far as I'm concerned, they acted...
They're fighting in a war of self-defense. Palestinians are defending themselves. And so, of course, there's going to be deaths, just like in any war. When you occupy a people's land and you're ethnically cleansing them, then how are you supposed to survive? You have to defend yourself. Gaza is an open-air prison. Palestinian children are being literally starved to death. And when they're not being starved to death, they're being bombed. How many hospitals has the IDF bombed?
I get it. What I may...
No, if you get it, then you should acknowledge that Palestinians are not the ones who are violating international law and all standards of justice and morality. It's one side that's violating all standards of justice and morality. You should acknowledge that. Don't just retreat and say, oh, it's complicated. I think you're better than that, Tony. I think you can acknowledge that this is a clear-cut violation by one side and not the other. One side is the victim of a brutal occupation, a brutal system of ethnic cleansing. You see that, you know that, I know that you do. So just acknowledge it. You don't have to play both sides.
The fact that I'm not framing it the way you are, I think breaking things down into black and white, yes and no, good and bad, can be to oversimplify a problem. You want to get the idea. Okay.
Show me who's bad. Show me how the Palestinians are bad.
Okay, I'll say a couple of things which is against Israeli supporters, just I think to keep common ground, so hopefully we can get constructive, because I'm surprised we got this far. Actually, I really am. Okay.
I'm not surprised. You look like a reasonable man.
Thank you. Unfortunately,
can I say one
as I've been transparent, everything I've seen about you gave me the impression that you were totally unreasonable. So,
who's
I'm
responsible?
pleasantly surprised we're talking.
And also, who's responsible
fair
for
enough.
implementing international law? Because you made it sound like we're all responsible.
Yeah, this is what I was.
But I don't
say.
think we are, because
I think
isn't it not the Security Council's
Let me lob in
responsibility?
this idea. I think we've broken this thing that we divided into people who are innocent and people who are guilty. And I think that black and white thing is not helping. We should be asking the question, on a scale of complicity, how guilty is any individual? And I think every individual should look in the mirror. This isn't limited to people in Palestine and Israel. The entire global community is in some way failed
Do you not
to
think it's
implement
more the
international law
Security
with
Council
equanimity, and we could all
the
have done better.
governments?
Yeah? Can we agree on that?
Can you, for example, condemn the Nazis for the Holocaust, or is it morally complicated? Why is that? Yes, of course, it's black and white when it comes to them, but when it comes to Palestinians, then it's complicated, it's gray, we can't make a moral judgment.
I'm not saying that, because what I haven't... It's a matter of proportionality, okay? It's a matter of... You're pointing out who's been substandard, even if, and I think you're right on balance, that the Palestinians have had a bad deal, okay? I think that.
I'm saying more than that.
Nonetheless, the key question, the ethical question is, what is a proportional response?
By who?
Now, I've heard some commentators, like Piers Morgan, I'm not a big fan, but he's plugged this question again and again and goes, what is a proportional response? So that's what we need to identify.
For who to do a proportionate response? But I'm trying to clarify what you mean by
proportional
who.
to everybody, because as far as I'm concerned, I want to be on the side of everybody. The species is my tribe. I'm not in any given group. And I think reality happens at the level of the individual, and the more you think in tribal mass terms, the easier it is to depersonalize it and lose track of the individual reality of pain and suffering, yeah?
Okay.
So you want to focus on that, and in reality that is happening to individual Israelis and individual Palestinians, and I want to empathize with them as much as I can, without just making out it's all 50-50 and the same, and ignoring the moral political quandaries you're putting out. Okay?
Is there any such thing as an innocent German in World War II? Were there any innocent Germans?
No, I don't think...
There were no innocent Germans? We're just caught up.
As I hope I just said, I don't think any human being is 100%. We're implicated and connected with each other. Everybody is culpable of being suboptimal.
So the Jews were culpable for the Holocaust? If everyone is culpable,
I don't want to be the guy who's going...
You have a certain standard for World War II?
I don't believe that. Okay, all I'm saying is we all make choices. We make some substandard choices, and terrible choices are made by the Nazis, no question. Okay, they are the most culpable people. You could argue.
So
that
can we compare the actions of the Third Reich to the IDF and what the Israelis are doing to the Palestinians, starving them to death, bombing them, ethnically cleansing them, stealing their land, bulldozing them, literally running over them with tractors? We can't compare that to genocides?
I think you can make, if you want to make a comparison, I'll go on an edge and go there. But I think in terms of scale, I do think there is a clear difference. Well, there is.
Yeah, I can agree. I can agree that the scale could be different, but are they within the same category of genocide?
If you want to argue they are, hypothetically, let's accept that they might be in the same scale. Now, if we measure the severity, 6 million people in concentration camps with clear intent and gas is not a level of is a much higher level of malicious intent, I think, than confining people into an area and ignoring international law and potentially
starving them.
Now the starvation, that hasn't been the ongoing policy prior to that, I don't think.
It has.
You said
95% of Gazans in Gaza don't have access to clean drinking water. They don't have access to medical supplies. The few hospitals that they have been turned into rubble. That's the reality of Gazans.
The figure that I've heard, correct me if I'm wrong, I've heard this from Abbas. Do you know Abbas?
No.
Okay, he's a Muslim. It's very good. Very good intel. I think most people here respect Abbas to a fair extent. I've heard quoted is that between 2008 and 2020, 5,000 is just over 5,000 Palestinians were killed in the conflict and about 250 Israelis, which means you've got a ratio of 20 to 1. Yeah, I think that's a significant statistic, and it should be on the table. Okay?
It's not. It's even more.
I don't want to hide from that, but I would then draw on it and go, okay, I'm looking at 5,000 versus 6 million. I think you can see there's a quantitative difference there. Also,
that doesn't take into account the total amount of deaths by Palestinians who are malnourished. They don't have access to medical care. They cannot go to access medical care, even in the West Bank, because there are checkpoints that prohibit Palestinians from traveling. This is why former President Jimmy Carter calls it an apartheid state.
Sure.
It is an apartheid state that was worse than what South Africa experienced.
I get it, but we were able to disentangle.
So what is the human toll of that? It's not just about civilians that are killed in armed conflict.
Okay. I'm not agreeing with the severity of your diagnosis, okay? I do agree that ethically, I think the Palestinians have had the short straw. That does not mean for 1 minute that I support what Hamas did, and as I've said, on that day, I'd be on the ground helping to defend those people, okay? Because
helping to defend Palestinians?
Helping to no.
Why?
Why?
You're saying you're this close to acknowledging that the Palestinians are being ethnically cleansed, but you still want to defend the ethnic cleansers?
Okay, no.
The settlers? That's what the settlers are doing.
I haven't reached the point where I'm agreeing with the level of ethnic cleansing which is comparable to the Holocaust. Number two,
you just agree with a little bit of ethnic cleansing.
No, I think
not 6 million. Maybe a little bit lower number of ethnic cleansing is okay.
Okay.
That's how you sound, my friend Tony. I just met you. I really like you, but this is how you sound. It sounds ridiculous.
Okay, I don't want to sound like that because it's not right, man. Let's go from foundational assumptions. Nia, intent in the Quran. I'm all about intent. Okay, I think it's always intent, and I could be wrong, but I think the level of malicious intent that was intrinsic in the Holocaust was significantly, and I mean significantly greater than the level of malicious intent which has been happening with Palestine. That doesn't mean there hasn't been malicious intent. That doesn't mean there hasn't been injustice. That doesn't mean that international law hasn't been flaunted, etc. But I can still engage with a level of empathy, which I think the Quran as well would prescribe, attempting to empathize with the individuals on the ground who are unnecessarily being taken down and suffering and dying when it's avoidable and we can do better. And I think we're all obliged to enter the best solution possible.
Now, there's a difference between a Palestinian whose land has been stolen, whose entire family has been wiped out, the rest of his family has been turned into refugees, and he's facing the death bombing of this terrorist state. There's a difference between that innocent Palestinian and an Israeli who is on that occupied land, is benefiting from the land of the Palestinians, and is living comfortably, and then has to face some kind of war situation. That's a war zone that has been created by Israel. It's been created by Israel, and it's been maintained by these Western powers like the US and the UN Security Council that have maintained this oppressive occupation. So you cannot make an equivalence between innocent Palestinians and those who are literally occupiers.
Okay, again,
would you agree with that?
I didn't dispute the way you're drawing the moral lines. What I'm disputing is the proportionality of your response. And
what response? What is the response?
The fact that you seem that we should always aspire to.
Are you talking about 40 decapitated babies?
No.
That was proven to be a hoax?
Okay, I don't know that's proven.
How about the raped ravers that turned out to be a hoax?
I don't know that's a hoax.
What about all of these hoaxes that have been pushed by Israeli propaganda? How about the AI images from Ben Shapiro of the charred babies? It turned out to be a hoax, fake images.
Okay, apparently.
These are all hoaxes. Like, what is the grave moral crime that the Palestinians have committed? They've just defended themselves.
Can I respond?
Yes, please.
I thought when Mohammed Hijab debated Piers Morgan, to me the most interesting thing that I heard during that debate was when Piers Morgan fleetingly said, "Do you believe in a two-state solution?" And Mohammed Hijab said, I'm paraphrasing, "I'm not sure, it's complicated." And then the debate moved on. And that to me was the sweet spot for a deeper conversation, okay? Because Mohammed Hijab is normally a fairly adamant individual. And when I heard him concede that point, I thought, here's the terrain we should be opening up in terms of the discussion. I think being not sure is often quite wise. I'm not sure about beheaded babies, okay? I genuinely don't know. It could be either way. I'm not sure about the hospital. It could be either way. I'm not sure about a number of things. What concerns me is people who are sure, above and beyond what is objectively reasonable. And the fact that you sound like you're so sure makes me maybe appeal to you to double check your sites. Maybe the level of
can you at least condemn Israel for bombing hospitals?
Oh yeah, of course. Hang on. Because it's about near and intent. Anybody who bombs a hospital and innocent people with intent, I clearly condemn. And by the same token, because I believe in the principle of self-consistency, I will also condemn people who I think disproportionately, Saturday the 7th was disproportionate. What was done to those people was disproportionate.
What was done to the people?
They were murdered.
Why? They're armed settlers. How do you know that? How you said that we're unsure about this thing and that thing. Why don't you admit that you're unsure who was actually killed? How do you know that they weren't actually IDF soldiers?
Okay, you know what? In the interest of consistency, you're correct. I don't. Okay.
So what's disproportionate about attacking these apartheid stormtroopers?
You're not allowed to steel man the position. Because I'm uncertain, I've now got to make a judgment as where do I think I should let the benefit of the doubt lie. So because I'm unsure if they were all IDF psychopaths, I think ethically I should give the benefit of the doubt to the notion that they probably weren't. Particularly the 2- and 3-year-old kids. What do you think? Yeah.
Where's the evidence that 2- or 3-year-old kids were deliberately targeted?
I didn't say deliberately targeted, but consequentially, and I'm not a consequentialist, I'm a deontologist, but consequentially it does seem that there are dead kids. And I don't think they were active malicious members of the IDF.
I mean, why can't you blame the settlers for bringing their children into a war zone, literally kicking Palestinians out of their homes and putting their children in the cribs of Palestinians? Can you condemn that?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
But it's about, hang on, if that's true, because I'm not sure I know my facts, but in terms of context, you want to be doing a couple of things. Yeah, point the finger and blame, because that's necessary. You've got to judge people on their choices. But at the same time, you should also be trying to empathise and look at the steel man position, okay? And when I don't hear people doing that, when they sound like they're certain about something, when they just want to point the finger, and when they don't want to try and empathise with the opposing position, I think psychologically and spiritually they could do ethically a bit better, and everybody should be doing it. Now, this is way the most emphatic I've ever seen. I'm genuinely impressed, because I've spent quite a few hours now watching you on YouTube videos, like Matt Dillahunty.
I was very empathetic to Matt Dillahunty.
Okay.
When he started accusing me of being a pedophile, what did I say?
Without going there, I'm genuinely I would never have thought in a million years I could stand and have a conversation with you that will get to this point.
Okay.
And that fills me with some hope that maybe something I've said might impact with you a tiny bit, we can find more common ground. But I'd like to hear that you can empathise at least with the 2-year-olds and 3-year-old kids you've got.
Yeah, of course. I empathize with any 2 or 3-year-old that is dragged by his or her Israeli parents to settle the stolen land of Palestinians. That 2 and 3-year-old doesn't deserve to be abused by Zionists, of course. It's a crime. It's a crime that Israel is perpetrating, that the Zionist settlers are perpetrating. Absolutely. The thing is that you're framing it as two innocent sides, and let's empathize with both.
I framed it as everybody on the planet Earth is culpable to some degree.
I'm not culpable of ethnic cleansing, and neither are you, Tony.
No. We're culpable of we could have done better by the State of Israel and Palestine collectively as an international community if we had enforced international law more diligently with more ubiquity.
No, we could have done better. We could have done better by not creating an Israeli state on someone else's land.
I agree. Okay.
And ethnically cleansing the people who are from that land, who are living on that land. That's how we could have done better. Why do you draw the line at 1967? Go back to 1945. We could have done better, right?
I do. If I went back to...
Okay, we agree.
No, we don't.
That was how we started. How we started the conversation. You asked me, how do we solve this situation in the Middle East? I said that the Zionist state needs to give back its stolen land. And now you agree with me that if we go back to 1945, the international community could have done better by not stealing that land. We're agreed, Tony. Numbers, Samuel, that talk about destroying the Amalekites, the Canaanites. Are you familiar with the passages in the Talmud regarding war and war policy, that women and children are legitimate targets when they're the enemies of the Jews? Are you familiar with these passages? Yes. Yes or no?
The answer is broadly no, but I've got a blanket answer. I take it as read that all religions have got a fair amount of nonsense in them, okay?
No. This is... I gave the Islamic position. The Islamic position is morally defensible. This position from the Talmud is not morally defensible. I gave a moral defense of the Islamic principle of why an enemy combatant who is of age, who can pick up a gun and can kill women and children, even if he is surrendered, in certain cases, the emir or the general can decide to take as prisoner or to execute. This is a policy of warfare found in Islam. It's found in other religions. It is something that is very humane and very moral. I'm willing to morally defend it. I'm not willing to morally defend the killing of women, children, elders, and priests, rabbis. In Islam says that they cannot be killed under any circumstance.
Okay, which is what happened on
Which
Saturday,
rabbis were killed?
Sorry, not rabbis. You listed some, but you know what you did. You listed some people, and a number of
Which
those,
children were killed?
When did this
You said that we're unsure about all of that. Right?
You're unsure. Place your bets. Okay. What do you think? You listed
I did
women,
place my bet.
children, and old people. Okay. There seems to be a general agreement that at least 1,000 people were killed. I think any reasonable person will go. That included some of the people you mentioned: women, children, old people. And I'll add here.
I'll concede.
Thank you.
If they deliberately targeted, as opposed to collateral damage, if Hamas deliberately targeted children, for example. Women is complicated because they are part of the IDF. They're combatants. But they targeted children. If they targeted, let me finish, targeted a rabbi, for example, or a priest deliberately, and that was the policy of Hamas, then that's condemnable because it violates Islamic law. There is no evidence that Hamas has that policy to violate Islamic law. If they did, the entire Muslim world would condemn that behavior. But these are just claims made by Israel in a way to manipulate the international audience. There's no evidence of these kinds of claims that Palestinians deliberately targeted children, deliberately targeted rabbis, deliberately targeted the elderly. So I condemn on the basis of Islamic law as well.
I've got a blanket axiom. I condemn anybody maliciously with malice and forethought using disproportionate violence on another person when they could have used lesser force. Period. I don't care who you are, what tribe you are, what time it is. Okay, I think most of the religious texts. I mean, I think Christianity, for example, I happen to be a particular fan of, although most Christians. Anyway.
Wait, what kind of Christian are you?
The kind where virtually every other Christian thinks I'm not a Christian because I don't take any. I know you take this stuff very literally, and I'm more in the kind of Jordan Peterson camp where I know you don't agree with that.
Jordan Peterson is a Christian?
Where Jordan Peterson would go, this is about values and ethics and hierarchies, and it's more complex and it's not so literal, it's more mythological. Yeah? But I'm a big fan of that, so I think all religions are speaking some good core values, including Islam. I'm down here, I talk to the Muslims quite a lot. The 5 pillars, excellent. I think the practice is more important than the theory. The 5 pillars are strong. Nia is strong. Having Fitra, very strong moral compass, you find yourself aligning with Jordan Peterson and that. The world to me basically divides into people who think we're blank slates with no moral compass. And
Do you think Tawheed is strong?
And you and I, and Jordan Peterson, and even Sam Harris, a whole load of people, we're all on the same team when it comes to, we think we have a moral compass. So before we tear each other apart, we should quickly celebrate that commonality.
No, because what is Sam Harris's moral compass? Sam Harris is openly saying that...
We both read his book and I've got it with me, and he gives a rational argument for how you can rationalise. And I'd love to go there, because I'd rather do ethics and metaphysics than do politics, okay? But given we're making hopefully some ground here, I condemn anybody who's killing disproportionately when somebody could surrender.
On that basis, you condemn the state of Israel. You did, because we are applying your principle right now of proportionality to the creation of the state of Israel in 1945, where all these millions of Palestinians were displaced or ethnically cleansed. You agree with me 100%, Tony, that is unproportionate, it is wrong, it is condemnable. Let it out, Tony. Let it out.
Okay, let me read back what you said. If you don't add phrases like "you just agreed with me 100%," it would be easier for me. No, I don't. I agree with you to some extent. Okay?
Focus on 1945, the creation of the state of Israel. You said that there could have been a better way to do it.
I believe so, because I'm always looking for the best. Okay, I'm always looking for the best.
You'll be accused of being an anti-Semite. You'll be accused of being.
From everybody's point of view, I'm sorry. Okay, no one's going to like me in this book. Okay? I'm always aiming for the best. We're not now in 45, 48. We need to learn the lessons of history. We need to state history accurately. Injustices were done. I completely believe the Palestinians got the rough edge of the deal. I'd ask anyone to ask themselves, you can choose to be born in a random body which is going to be Jewish or Palestinian after 1945, which is okay. And I think most sane people should randomize to go, I'll go for a Jewish body because I think they got the better deal. Yeah?
No, why would you want to be born into the body of a terrorist?
I mean, try and okay, you know what I mean. I mean the material circumstances. I would choose, I think, clearly to be born into the body. I think an Israeli Jewish body. Okay.
Yeah, settler. You want to be born into the body of the genocider, the occupier, the terrorist. Why? Where's the morality of that? Where's the morality? Tony, please. It's more fun when you're here.
Okay, it's more fun when I'm here. Okay, however, now ask yourself the same question. Would you rather be born in the body of a Palestinian or a Jewish person prior to 1945? And I would hope, if you're honest with yourself and objective, the answer to that is very clear. You would not want to be born in the body of a Jewish person. Okay?
When? Prior to 1945.
He's not saying it. No, I am. I'm trying to look at it from multiple angles, which is what you should do. You shouldn't just. It's very easy to look at a thing from one angle and go, it looks this way. What you've got to do is look for the counter argument and steel man as best you can. That's how you make progress. So look for the counter argument to your position. Now, I think it is a reasonable postulate that Palestinians being born Palestinian after 45 will be a worse option than being born.
What's your point, though?
My point is try and empathise from both directions and understand that you said it goes back to 45. In 45, you had a bunch of people who were
I empathize with plenty of Jews who have experienced the same kind of trials and tribulations of life that every human being goes through. Yeah, of course. Christians, Jews, it's Buddhists, it's atheists. I do empathize with the human condition, of course. Okay? This is something that all Muslims have this position. But the question is, with this particular political disaster that has been created, with the creation of the state of Israel, what is the moral stance of this state? Is it an occupier? Is it an ethnic cleanser that is perpetuating genocide against an innocent people, the Palestinian people? We have to gain clarity on that moral question before we can discuss a solution.
I think you will gain more clarity by asking, has it been just? And the broad answer is probably no. Once you start chucking in the term of genocide,
not just is
it becomes
not just as mealy mouthed.
Moving forward, the minute you chuck in terms like genocide, and you're on the
so the minute that we talk about the truth, then we can't progress.
No, I think we must always try and talk about the truth, but truth is about getting things into the correct proportion. It's not just a fact, it's about evaluating the fact as accurately as possible, and constantly using loaded phrases, even if they were technically and factually accurate, constantly emphasizing ethnic cleansing genocide will exacerbate the situation worse than if you occasionally draw people's attention to the individual soldier on the ground and you holding an individual gun.
The people who are constantly... Sorry, go ahead.
When I asked the question about you with the gun,
go ahead.
I could be wrong, but I think you slightly dodged the question by saying it would depend on what a higher person had decreed the rules of law. Okay, so let me rephrase my hypothetical. If the person was on the ground, the 19-year-old is raped, and you've got the gun, and they want to surrender, and you have no idea what the mandate is from above, and now you've got to make your own ethical decision, and they would like to surrender, given all of your understanding of, they may well be IDF, and they're part of the Zionist settlement, and all of that stuff, would you choose to kill them, or would you accept their surrender?
I would take them as prisoner of war.
Thank you.
All else being equal.
Thank you. Can I shake your hand?
But this is not what this. Zionists are not going to be happy with this answer because because that's exactly what the Palestinians did. They took all of these prisoners of war. They're crying about it constantly on social media.
Look, nobody else may be particularly happy with that, but you don't understand how I put a number of hours into watching your stuff.
Okay.
And it's always nice when you have. This is a perfect example. I had such a strong feeling about you as being everything I think I've seen you say and do. I found pretty much despicable. Okay?
Well, maybe you didn't listen to me long enough.
No, actually, I think I did, unfortunately, but maybe you were in environments with other people who were arguing in a combative fashion, which produces a combative result. Now, do you know how nice it is when you're sure you're right about somebody and you discover they're not as bad as you thought? And if you can empathise with that and expand that feeling out to the wider network of Israelis and Palestinians, maybe, shock horror, not all of them are quite as bad as you think. Just spend, as Daniel Schmattenberger says, if everyone spends 10 minutes just trying to empathise.
Well, I appreciate it, Tony. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, it was actually
really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Right, that's a life-changing experience.
Okay, appreciate it.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Hey, Daniel. How are you?
Good.
You're free for a conversation or you're tired now?
Should we?
It's Christian, but he's in a...
No.
It's not going to be. It's going to be the same old circular argument.
What topic?
You're Salafi, correct?
It depends on what you mean by Salafi.
You follow the way of the Salaf, right? However they...
Like every Muslim.
You go for it, right?
Like every Muslim, yeah.
Well, not every Muslim does that. Some follow like additional, imams and all that kind of stuff. Are you one of them, or?
No, following the imams follow the Salaf.
Okay. All right, fine.
Every Muslim agrees on the example of the Salaf.
Awesome. Now, with that in mind, are you able of talking about exactly how, from the Salafi understanding, Allah and His attributes relates?
That's not an interesting debate for me.
Just because every Muslim I know will tell me Allah is one. Okay?
Who would say what?
Every Muslim I know will say Allah is one.
Yeah.
Right? And I ask them one what? And then they'll give me the idea that He has no mother, no father, no sons, no nothing. So therefore He's one and only supreme.
He's not a white man either.
But then unfortunately you come to the fact that He has these attributes that, depending on how you understand them, might be additions to Him, which then makes a problem out of how He's eternal or omnipotent when He has additional properties to Him.
No, like I have one mind.
Okay.
And that one mind can be characterized with different attributes.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that it's an addition to the mind. It's my mind or my will, for example.
Okay.
I might have certain characteristics, but that doesn't mean it's a multiplicity. It's still one.
Are any of those thoughts or actions that come out of your mind equivalent to the entirety of your mind?
Thoughts that come out of my mind, I don't know what that means.
So you likened the understanding of the attributes to your mind and thoughts, right?
Say that slower, I'm not following.
You likened the attributes of Allah to human thoughts and how multiple things can come out of human thoughts.
No, I was just explaining the difference between what is, something can be one and still have attributes.
Okay.
Attributes do not contradict that oneness.
Okay, but here is the issue with that.
Why?
Do any of the attributes of the mind, your mind, equate to the entirety of your mind? Or are they a part of your
Are
mind?
you talking about God now or his mind?
It's still my mind. It's still my mind. My mind can operate, for example. My mind can have attributes. It's still my mind. It doesn't become a second mind or a third mind.
Okay, so all of the attributes of your mind equate to your entire mind.
It's one mind. My mind can have certain attributes and it can have certain thoughts.
How do they relate to the one mind, is what I'm saying? Are they equal to the entire mind or like a percentage of the entire mind? These attributes of the mind.
I don't know what that means. The mind is not a material thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Neither are the attributes, correct? Of Allah.
They're not
Because
material,
I'm
no.
guessing the only reason we're talking about the mind is because we're trying to liken that to Allah's attributes. I'm guessing.
It's an analogy, yeah.
Yeah, as an analogy. Perfect. So my problem that I'm having when it comes to Allah as quote-unquote the mind and his attributes as the attributes of the mind is because I can't see anywhere in Sunni understanding of Allah where these attributes are well described in relation to Allah. So are they distinct from Allah? Are they the same thing as Allah? And since there are many of them, do they make up Allah?
No.
Or are they just parts of Allah?
No, you can't use that type of language to talk about the mind. It doesn't, even the way that you're describing it right now, doesn't make sense.
Okay.
The mind is not like a box or like a globe. The mind is not a material thing that you can compartmentalize in that way. In the same way that Allah can. So when we talk about the Trinity, for example, the disanalogy between the oneness of Allah and a Trinity is that the Father, Son, and the Spirit are three separate minds and three separate wills.
There's only one mind and one will.
So answer this question. So can the Father think I am the Son?
So that's a matter of identity, and doesn't apply.
Why not? Can the Father say I am the? Can the Father think I am the Son?
So Daniel, you've jumped a second. I am happy to discuss that with you, but before we do, I would like to have tie a knot around the attributes of Allah parts. Are you okay with that?
I don't understand what your claims are.
So my claim is this:
the mind doesn't have parts because you have thought or because you have. That's not how a mind is.
So defining a part as something that does not equate to the whole of a thing. Are you okay with that?
A part is not a whole of a thing.
Something that does not equate to the whole of a thing. A window is a part of a car, but it is not the car itself.
You're making a category mistake. You're thinking about a car, you're thinking about a material object, and you're thinking about compartmentalizing it.
Okay.
That's not the same as the will. Like, what is a will? So if I will to pick up this cup, is that a separate will than if I will to, touch him on the shoulder? It's not two separate wills. It's one will, correct?
It would be one.
It's one. Okay, it's one will.
Distinctive actions, right? Now
it's still one will, though.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now,
your original point was God is one in Islam. But he has attributes, and that seems to contradict his oneness. And I explained that just like the will can operate in different ways, it's still one will.
Okay. So that would mean that the attributes are not distinct. They are all the same thing, simply actioned in different ways. Al-Rahman, Al-Rahim, Al-Warith, they're all the same thing.
I didn't say that.
But you see, your analogies are pointing in that direction.
No, but so my position, and this is a broader Salafi position, is that when we start using this kind of philosophical language to talk about God, it will lead us astray. And I'll give you an analogy. So imagine that you have a cloud, okay? A cloud, like a cloud or a mist or a fog. And a fog, by its very nature, is indistinct. It is something that is indistinct. It doesn't have very clear-cut attributes. For example, it's a cloud. If you begin to carefully define the cloud in a very precise way, and you get more and more exact, and you build up this extensive definition and explanation and description of what that cloud is, then by the very nature of your extrapolation, you have gone further away from what the cloud actually is, which is something indistinct, is something ambiguous, is something that you cannot exactly comprehend.
Okay.
In the same way, there are aspects of the unseen, which include, for example, Allah, different attributes of the angels, different attributes of heaven and hellfire, that the human mind in its limited form cannot fully grasp and cannot fully comprehend. Now, if you engage in a kind of speculative theology to try to create distinct definitions and explanations, then according to my view and the view of many Islamic scholars, going all the way back to Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, or Imam Ahmad and others, and some of the Salaf as well, they're part of the Salaf, then you are going to stray or get further from the reality of what the unseen is and the reality of who Allah is. Do you understand that?
So that would all be valid if only Allah didn't actually tell you that the most beautiful names belong to Him, right?
Yeah, He's described Himself
the mist
according to His majesty.
So in this instance, right, the mist has described itself to you. And now you're trying to understand exactly what the descriptions of the mist are.
No, it's very clear to understand. These names and attributes of Allah, they're very clear to understand. Every Muslim reads the Quran, they read these descriptions, and they understand. To take a further step and say we need to systematize this and add further description, some will do that, some Islamic scholars will do that, and I have no problem. But a lot of Islamic scholars, and I take this position, they don't engage in that kind of speculative theology. So that's the difference between my position and maybe some of the people that you debate with elsewhere.
You need to engage in it, because otherwise you have to concede that the definitions you're given of these beautiful names in the Quran don't actually have any real meaning.
They do, it's very clear. Ar-Rahman, it's very clear what Rahman means. Sure. Al-Wadud, the loving, it's very clear what Al-Wadud means. Now, I understand that. We've been reading these verses in the Quran. The vast majority of Muslims, 99.9999%, they read the Quran on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. They have no question about these terms. They don't need to engage in speculative theology in order to understand Allah, to worship Him, to submit to Him.
I understand that.
That's not the same with the Trinity, see? The Trinity, the average Christian will read about the Trinity and will not understand the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are three, yet they're one. The average Christian will not understand that.
We can get to that, and I'm happy
Let's get to it. Let's get to it.
I would just like you to come to a conclusion with me about these attributes. If you say that everyone knows what al-wadud is and al-warith means, right? Does it mean the exact same thing it means when human beings showcase these attributes?
No, of course it's not the same exact thing.
So what does it mean then? Because ultimately, the same problem applies. The descriptions are given, but we have no idea what they mean because we can't even compare them to anything.
You can. Do you know what a game means?
Sorry?
Do you know what a game means?
G-A-M-E.
G-A-M-E. Do you know what game means? Define game for me.
Within the word of English language, game could be a kind of animal that you
give me the definition of game, please.
It could be
Don't give me examples. Give me what definition of a game.
You participate in for leisure, usually involving some kind of competition.
What if it's a word game?
Sorry?
What if it's a word game?
Same thing, yeah.
What if it's a crossword puzzle? It's not a competition.
It would be because
your definition doesn't apply to a crossword game.
You're going against somebody else, correct?
Your definition doesn't apply to all the uses of the word game.
Okay.
So you can understand the word game, but you can't define it.
I just did for you.
You did not. Your definition of game did not include many examples of game that I could give you. You say it's a competition for leisure. What about the Olympics? Is the Olympics leisure? No, it's for professionals.
No, but
what about the NBA? What about professional cricketers? It's not for leisure. It's a sport, right? It's a competitive sport for money. So your definition did not include them.
That's fine.
So you don't understand the word game.
We do, and we can apply it to multiple different things. But the problem still remains with all of Allah's names.
No. The point, you missed the point. You missed the point. You can understand something without being able to give a definition. You could understand a concept or a term like game or happy.
I'm trying to, but this camera's on my way.
Come around.
All right.
It's just going to go in a circular motion.
Yeah, it's going to be a waste of time.
Okay. How you doing, Daniel? I shake your hand, but I'm a Christian, so I'm very happy to pee on it or something. But yeah.
We can shake the hands of Christians.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know who you are, but
I'm just David. Well, he said it to David Wood apparently. Once upon a time.
about what?
Apparently, if you go into a Christian's house, there's pee everywhere. Apparently, according to you. I'd like to know where you got
That
that
was
from.
the response to David Wood's insult against Islam.
Guys, can I get some space or
enough.
you want to get real close?
It's enough.
It's enough. Daniel, you cool? With me being
I mean,
here?
if they can see that on camera, if you
think
can
they
just
see
turn
me.
around.
Sorry. Okay, so with the mist example, with the cloud example, the mist and the cloud being Allah in this instance, as an analogy, not in reality, they've actually described some things about themselves to you, about the compartmentalization.
I didn't say the
themselves
mist has no description.
to you. No. You said that the mist exists, but it's something a little bit abstract that we can't quite understand. We can look deeply into the mist, maybe know it's like a chemical compound, whatever the case might be, but we've dived so deep in that instance that we've lost the perception of what the actual mist is.
We've lost the essence of what it actually
mist
is.
So Allah has attributes. If we dive too deep into them, then we'll lose the essence of who Allah is.
This is something that's generally in language. Many concepts, like in philosophy, the Greek philosophers, for example, want to define justice.
Okay.
Or you want to define happiness, or you want to define law.
Okay.
And you reach a point where definitions aren't satisfying and they actually tend to obscure the reality of that concept because of the analysis that you're engaged in.
Sure thing.
There was a period within the 20th century, there was a philosophical movement of ordinary language philosophers who said that this is a big problem with any kind of speculative analysis or philosophical analysis, the ordinary language philosophers. So this is, I think, a very deep critique of the entire approach of trying to analyze something that is so beyond human reason, or is so complex, or is so abstract or general. We can still have an understanding of those things. We can understand what law is. We can understand what happiness is. We can understand what a game is. We can understand it, even if we cannot give a precise analytic definition that covers all cases of our usage of that term.
Okay, sure. But then now, is there any definition you can give to Allah being merciful at all that actually captures the definition of what it means at all? Can we compare Allah's mercy to anything on earth to understand what it actually means when Allah calls himself either al-Warith or something?
Yeah, Allah's mercy is compared in hadith, for example, that Allah divided His mercy into 100 parts,
and kept 99 for himself,
99 for himself and one for himself, and like the mercy that a mother deer has, for example, not stepping on its child. So those are descriptions that are given by the Prophet ﷺ that does help us understand what this mercy is. Does that mean that we have a comprehensive, 100% encompassed understanding of Ar-Rahman? We can, because it's something that's infinite. It's something that is really beyond our understanding. But we can still get some understanding of it through the word Ar-Rahman, the name of Allah.
Okay, no, that's fine. I'm glad you admitted that. The last part of this, before we can move on to your Trinity stuff, if you'd like, is then when you have all these 99, potentially more attributes, are they really distinct, or are they just the same thing?
I don't know what that means. I don't know what distinct means.
Are they the same as the other? So is Ar-Rahman the same thing as Ar-Rahim?
No, it's a different attribute.
Okay, so there's a distinction between them. They are not the same thing. That's all it means.
They're different attributes.
In the same way that my two fingers are distinct. They're not quite the same.
Yeah, they're different attributes.
Awesome.
Just like you can say that Daniel, in some moments he can be merciful, in some moments he can be angry.
And those two are distinct.
They're distinct, but Daniel is still one person. I have one mind, I have one will.
Okay. Now, when it comes to Allah, are these attributes both distinct and eternal?
Yes. They're eternal attributes,
Okay, so there's eternally distinct attributes. And are they a part of Allah or the whole of Him?
Again, I don't understand this part saying that it's one compartment or another. Just in the same way that Daniel can be described as angry at times or merciful at times, that doesn't mean that anger is a part of my mind.
But it would be. So the emotion of anger would be an emotion that you would feel, but it won't be the whole of your emotional spectrum. So it'd be a part of it, as an example.
But that doesn't mean that it's a part in the sense of a part. You're equivocating on the word part.
So
that's the problem.
Part meaning it is not the whole. It is not equivalent to the whole. That's all it means. You have an emotional spectrum. You can be happy.
It's
sad,
an attribute of me without necessarily being a part in that way.
It's a part if it's not equal to the whole.
That's not the way that I use part.
How would you use parts?
As an attribute. As an attribute. I have the attribute of sometimes being merciful, sometimes being angry, without saying that is a part. I have a distinct part of me that is the anger part of me.
Okay, so it's a component
We don't talk like that, right?
We don't, but it's a component of without being the whole of. So it's a part.
It's an aspect of my personality.
Aspects and parts are the same thing.
No, the way that you're using part is that this is a part, like this is a component.
Let's use aspects. Same thing. Okay? So are these aspects of Allah really distinct where they are not one another?
I already said that, you know, they're distinct.
And they're eternal. Because they've always been there along with Allah.
Okay.
So, if that is the case, what you ultimately have is you have 99 plus really distinct eternal things that are next to Allah.
No.
So they share in the attributes of Allah in that they are distinct, they are not one another, and then they are separate from Allah, yet they are still also eternal. So ultimately,
but I denied that entire premise.
99 gods.
I denied that entire premise.
But you didn't.
In the same way that I have 99 attributes or 1,000 different attributes that I have. Right? They're not. That doesn't mean there are 1,000 Daniels.
Wait, but your attributes are created.
Yes.
And they're not eternal.
So why is that relevant to the analogy?
Because with Allah, Allah is the only thing that's eternal. Well, it should be.
Yes.
But then if the attributes are distinct from Allah but are also eternal, that would mean that for as many attributes as you have eternal things that are really distinct from Allah.
No, they're not distinct from, just in the same way that anger is not distinct from my mind or from my will. Those attributes are not distinct from Allah.
Is anger...
They're not distinct from... anger is not the whole of me, right?
So it's an aspect of part.
I said it's an aspect,
right?
Yeah.
And then that would then...
going in a circle.
Well, we are going in a circle. You're not quite getting what I'm saying here.
That's true. I don't get what you're saying.
Because ultimately, by the thought process that we've gone through, Allah has His attributes, but they are eternal as He is, but they are also distinct, and they are aspects of Him, and not the whole. So therefore, we have 99 plus eternal attributes that are next to Allah, but they are really distinct from Him because they're not equal to Him.
You're equivocating on the word distinct,
have 99
part,
gods.
all of this.
Yeah.
This is equivocation. It's still just like if I was eternal in that I'm immortal, I won't die.
Yep.
And I have anger, I have love, I have mercy.
And they're also eternal.
They're distinct aspects of me. Does that mean that there are 1,000 different Daniels? So just because I'm immortal?
I guess this will be the...
Yes or no? Yes or no?
So this
yes
will
or
be
no?
the main qualifier.
Yes or no? Yes or no?
The main qualifier
yes or no?
would then be...
Yes or no?
Do you think that these attributes are abstract in the mind?
Is anger an abstract thing?
You could say it is, yes. Because, abstract to mean it's in the mind and it has no causal power.
Yeah, anger does have causal power.
No.
I get angry and I swing at someone.
No, but that will be the causal power of the swing, not the anger. The anger can lead
the anger causes me to act.
Right, but anger doesn't actually have any real placement in the real world.
No, why? And this is exactly the kind of speculation that leads us nowhere. It just takes us nowhere.
We can have things that are concrete, just in reality, like you and me and these cameras, and things that are abstract.
Is anger real?
I would say it's abstract. It's in the mind, it has no causal power.
Does anything in the mind have causal power?
Arguably not.
Then how are we able to live? How can we walk? How are you talking to me right now?
I would say that all comes from something called secondary causality that God has given to us. But as a Muslim, you can't hold to that.
So it's really God. I don't know what that means. Explain.
Before we go there, I think this can actually...
No. Let's stay right here. Let's stay right here. It's very important for us to understand what you mean by nothing in the mind can cause anything in the world.
It can tie into a tricky conversation, actually.
Like, do you have a will, for example?
Before we venture too far away...
Is will abstract?
1 second, Daniel.
No.
Before you go too far away, because you asked me a question before I didn't answer, I gave you 2 qualifiers. You asked me before that is the attributes different from Allah, yes or no? In the same way that your anger is different from your will, yes or no? And to answer you, I was just telling you that there are two kinds of ways that we can qualify things, either by being abstract, in the mind, has no causal power, or by being concrete, exists in reality and has causal powers.
No, but we don't agree on the mental attributes not having causal powers. We don't agree on that.
If you are angry or you think of a jellyfish or a flying dragon, it doesn't actually cause anything to occur in reality.
It does. If I think about a cup of coffee and I desire a cup of coffee, those are all in the mind. It causes me to reach for a cup of coffee and to drink it.
Okay, but you can desire a cup of coffee and get water instead. Right? Like the causal power, so there's a chain of causation that's happening within you when you think of a thing and perform an action. Distinctly, when we're talking about Allah and comparing Him to the mind, when you have these eternal attributes, are they distinctive? Are they abstract? As in, they have no causal power, and they
I disagree. They do have causal power.
Awesome. So they're concrete because they exist in reality.
No, something can have causal power without being concrete.
Okay, so in your mind, they are abstract and have causal power. Is that what you're saying about the attributes of Allah?
You can have mental attributes that have causal power, yes.
So the attributes
like my thoughts, my will, my desire, that has impact on my body and how I behave and the choices that I make in a concrete way.
Okay, so you are... A moment, please, if you don't mind. So, just to sum it up, in your understanding, Allah has these eternal number of attributes that are eternal like Him. They are distinct because they are not each other and they are not Him, but then they are abstract but have causal power. Is that correct?
Let's say yes.
Okay.
What are you getting from this?
Ultimately, that's the problem with the Sunni understanding of
Why?
of God
Because I said,
oneness.
imagine that I have these different attributes that are distinct from me, and imagine that I'm immortal. Does that mean that there's 1,000 or 1,000,000 different Daniels? No.
Not 1,000 different Daniels, but 1,000 different things that are like Daniel in that they are also eternal and immortal, and they're distinctive because they're not each other and they're not
So
Daniel.
there's not one Daniel. There's 1,000 things like Daniel.
There's one Daniel and 1,000 things like Daniel. Exactly.
That makes no sense. It's just me who, in this scenario, is immortal.
So,
it's just me. One mind.
So
one mind, one will.
It's not just you. It's you and the things, and that is the logical problem.
No,
sorry.
So this is
That's
you're begging the question because you're saying that they're things.
Yes, because
that's begging the question.
You admitted that they are abstract but have causal power and are not each other. So they
I didn't say that that's a thing like a concrete thing. I said that you can be an abstract and still have causal power.
Okay, well, you can't because in order for you to be concrete,
that's your claim.
If you're only abstract, you can't have any causal power. But just to say whatever you're surmising is the case, you now have one Daniel who has these attributes of eternality and immortality, and then you have 1,000 other things that are just like Daniel in that they also share these attributes that only Daniel should have. So therefore,
we'll say there's one Daniel.
There's one Daniel and also 1,000 other things that are like Daniel.
No,
so,
there's 1,000 attributes of Daniel. That's all that means.
They are distinct and eternal.
Yeah, they're distinct. Yeah, but it's still Daniel.
And in your mind,
it's still Daniel.
Oh wait. Sorry, it's still Daniel. So the attributes are still Allah.
No, the attributes of Daniel, these characteristics of Daniel, are Daniel. They're a part of me.
So in Allah's case,
it's still one Daniel.
You know how you used the word part just now.
It's still one Daniel. That's the point.
But,
you're not going to get 1,000 Daniels just because I have 1,000 different characteristics that are immortal.
It's one Daniel made up of 1,000 things.
No, I have 1,000 different attributes, 1,000 different aspects, 1,000 different whatever. Oh, sorry.
No,
if you want to say parts, you're using part in this equivocal way. That's the thing.
But aspects insinuates parts. An aspect of me is a part of me that is not equal to the whole.
In the same way that me having the attribute of mercy or love doesn't mean that there's a part of me, like a part of my mind, that is the anger part or the mercy part or the love part.
Well, I'm not saying...
That's what we started with, remember?
I'm not trying to tell you to segment your mind, because don't forget, your mind is potentially infinite. It doesn't have any kind of concrete box around it, correct? So I'm not saying segment your mind into quadrants. I'm simply saying
then what does it mean to be distinct?
Not the other. So in the same way that I am not you and you're not me.
Yes, because we have two separate minds.
we have separate minds, but also a number
Just
of
like
other
the
things.
Father, Son, and Spirit have separate minds
Okay,
according to
so,
Christian theology.
we can
That's
go-
why they're three distinct gods.
we can go into that
That's
now.
why it's polytheism.
We can go into that now, but just understand that by what you just said here, unfortunately, you are admitting
I don't know.
Allah is compartmentalized.
I don't think so.
And He has other things with Him that are also
No.
eternal.
In the same
So
way that
that's
if
real
I
polytheism.
was immortal, I didn't die, imagine, and I have different characteristics,
That are the same as
personality
you?
traits, that wouldn't mean that there are multiple Daniels. You haven't proven anything.
Personality traits.
Yeah, like anger, like mercy, like being loving, like being charitable, like being insightful, or
Okay.
whatever
And-
aspects of my personality that there are.
Right.
They're attributes of me.
Okay, but-
One Daniel.
One
if I was
Daniel-
immortal, it doesn't change that there being one Daniel.
As long as the attributes themselves are also immortal, or eternal in this case,
Yeah, there would be.
then they are the same as you because they're not distinct from you.
No, that's a jump. That's a leap.
Okay, so
Why would they be the same as me?
so they're the same as you in that they are also eternal and immortal.
If I'm not immortal, they're
So-
distinct from me, right?
Think about it like yes, they are because they're
Then
not
how
you.
does being immortal make them? So if I'm
if
not
you're
immortal,
yep.
I'm not immortal.
Yep.
My anger is distinct from me.
Yep.
We agree.
Yep.
Okay. But it's still one Daniel. Do we agree on that?
Absolutely. But you
But how
are,
does making me immortal suddenly make it multiple Daniels?
because Allah, in the last case, He is necessary, correct? That He can't be any other way. He has to be Allah. Because without Him, there's no creation or
No,
existence.
you're arguing for divine simplicity. Divine simplicity is a position that some Muslims have, not all Muslims.
Yes.
You started by asking if I'm Salafi.
Yep.
Salafis do not hold the position
I'm
of
aware,
divine simplicity.
and that's why you have this problem.
No, there was no problem.
There is a problem.
There was no problem.
The problem still being, again, that your understanding of Allah causes necessary parts of Allah to exist. Meaning that either Allah is made up of things, meaning He's contingent.
He has different
or
aspects, different attributes.
The aspects and the attributes have the qualities of Allah. So therefore you have Allah, who is the God of the universe, but also you have another God of the universe, Ar-Rahman, another God of the universe, Ar-Rahim.
Ar-Rahman, or the attributes of Allah, do not have they don't encompass
Every attribute of Allah?
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, so then that means that your position then is that Allah is Allah because He is one, but then He has these attributes that when you add them all up, then you get Allah.
Why can't you address the example of me as a finite being having different attributes,
Okay.
but it not being a multiplicity
Because
of
Allah
Daniel?
is, very simple. Allah is infinite, He's infinite. And you, as a creation of His, can be comfortably composites. It's okay to say that you're made up of
No, but
parts,
my mind is not composite in the way that you're describing.
but it's created, so it's not eternal.
How is that relevant? How's that relevant? Yeah, we should move on. This is a circle.
Well, again, I made my position very, very clear. Unfortunately, because of your thinking, that is the case. However, you said you wanted to ask me a question about Trinity.
Well, I already explained that. You have the Father.
minds
The
and three
Father. Can the Father think that I am the Son?
So there's a couple of problems with that.
Answer.
No.
Can the Father think I am the Son?
What
It should be a
makes you-
simple no.
Well, again, it depends. What makes you think that the Father has thoughts?
Oh, so God, according to you, doesn't have thoughts.
What makes you think He does? I don't think He does.
The Bible is the expression God is speaking, right?